All right, welcome to the SnydeReport. I am Gary Snyder. My guest today is Ed Robertson of TV Confidential. Ed, welcome.
Gary, good to see you.
It's been a while, my friend.
Been a long time.
But
I'm
hey,
I'm glad you still carry my show, so that's all good.
you can hear TV Confidential every weekend. I think 3 times a weekend now, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, or something like that.
Plenty of chances.
Right on Indiana Talk. So, how's the radio show going?
Doing well. We just picked up a station in LA Metro that'll start carrying us this week. So that's when you add everything up, it's about 25 stations covering about 35 markets across the U.S. and Canada, including 3 of the top 5 Nielsen markets and 8 of the top 25. And so our reach has expanded considerably since you and I first met each other 15 years ago. So
And
it's all good.
I'm gonna throw you a softball here. TV Confidential is a radio show about
Television.
plain and
See?
simple. Oh, who do you have on this week? What are you talking about this week on TV Confidential?
Who do we have on this week? We have part 2 of a conversation that began last week with Harrison Page from Lionheart and Sledgehammer and CPO Sharkey. He's got a great story about working with Peter Falk on a Columbo in the 90s, and he's got a lot of good stories about working with Russ Meyer on his first on Dixon, which is his first movie role, which launched his career. Then we have the first of a 2-part conversation with Ann Serling and Jody Serling, the daughters of Rod Serling. This past December 25th marked the 100th birthday of Rod Serling. So Rod Serling would have been 100
Wow.
if he were still with us. And the fun thing about talking to Ann and Jody is that you and I, we think of Rod Serling as this mythical figure because, we all grew up watching Twilight Zone and we all have our favorite Twilight Zone episodes and this, that, and the other thing. They give us a good glimpse of who he was as a person. He was a dad, he was a dad. He was a dad who would, when he came home from work and came out and went, got out, left his den, which is what they called man caves back then,
A den. You don't hear that very often
anymore.
You don't
hear the word den anymore, only on the Brady Bunch. Everyone uses man cave, but no, he was, we think of Rod Serling as this mythical figure. We don't think of him as a guy who will sit down and watch the Flintstones with his kids, or will make funny noises and funny faces and tell dad jokes and stuff like that. So it's a really fun conversation that you can hear this week on Indiana Talks.
Well, thank you for all you do for the Indiana Talks, our sister radio station that we run here with the SnydeReport. Ed, I wanted to bring you on because, just some really weird circumstances happening, but with the death of Gene Hackman. But before we get into that, I just wanted to take a few moments. Us here in Indiana, obviously, Gene Hackman is known as the coach in Hoosiers, a movie that, came out in the late 80s, I believe.
86, I think it was, yeah.
About a small town, Indiana. Actually, it was modeled after Milan High School in their 1950-something run at the state championship with small school beating one of the big schools in the state championship, which is about the only time it's ever really happened in Indiana. But they made a movie about it, and obviously, as here in Indiana and being Hoosiers, we love Gene Hackman in that role. But Gene was more than just the coach in Hoosiers. He had 2 Academy Awards. So talk a little bit about Gene Hackman's career.
He was, he really was one of the great American actors of the 20th century, certainly the last 50, 60 years. And you talk about an actor with a range of depth, whether it was an intensely driven New York police detective like Popeye Doyle, like whether it was the basketball coach in Hoosiers, whether it was Lex Luthor in Superman.
I forgot all about that.
I forgot about Superman. See, that's the cool thing about Gene Hackman. He made, he made all these movies, and all these different type of characters, and he wasn't like you can't imagine. Once upon a time, you couldn't imagine Robert De Niro playing a comedic role. He was always intense, but when Gene Hackman played Lex Luthor in Superman, it was to my knowledge, it was his first truly comedic role. I mean, even though Lex Luthor was not a comedic character in the Superman comic books, he brought a range to it and a sense of humor to the character that kind of leveled everything, and gave a different sense of reality to the Superman movie. So, so it's funny. Tonight will be the Academy Awards broadcast here in L.A. I would imagine since the news broke of his passing, or at least the discovery of his deceased body on this past Wednesday, the people who put together the in memoriam segment that honors all those who left in the last 12 months, I'm sure they scrambled to put a
working
piece
overtime
together.
here.
Yeah. I mean, those things are always very subjective. There's an article that said more or less that what I'm going to paraphrase. It is subject to the likes and dislikes 9 out of 10 of the people who put these things together, and so, or it's also subject to the memory and sense of history of the people who put these things together. So if you get an intern who can't think past 2020, you may not remember somebody whose career spanned that. But I'm willing to bet Gene Hackman will be featured prominently in the award in memorial segment tonight, because that they're not going to let that pass. Let's put it that way.
No, it would be difficult for him to not to recognize it.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about Gene Hackman, again, Hoosiers comes to mind here. And boy, just the mystery and everything surrounding his death. When I first heard about it on the news, I thought it would be old age. He's, his wife found him, something like that. But, the more that comes out about Gene Hackman and his death and the death of his wife and one of his dogs, it's just really hard to wrap your head around.
It's hard and it's sad, and it's strange. Ordinarily, if you do if you do a tribute such as you and I are doing, Gary, we would say Gene Hackman passed away Wednesday, February 26th, but that we can't say that. The only thing we can say is that he was found dead that day, and investigators are still piecing together what happened as you and I record this conversation Sunday afternoon your time on March 6th. As of this morning, they think he had been deceased 9 days at the time he was discovered on the 26th.
They said that his pacemaker, the last time it went off was like on the 17th.
Yes, and there was advanced sign of rigor mortis and some early signs of mummification, both on his body and I believe the body of his wife. Although, again, the weird thing is they're not sure when. They're not sure the exact cause of death of both of them.
Mm-hmm.
But as best as we know, according to investigators, Gene Hackman probably, whatever he died of, he probably died on February 17th, as best as they can determine. But they're still trying to figure out the cause of death. The early reports, as you know, suggested signs of carbon monoxide poisoning, which that's a whole scenario.
And that's what popped into my head first is, if you see one death and one person's that it just doesn't enter your mind. But when you see that the death of Gene Hackman, his wife, and a dog, then you start thinking, well, murder, suicide, but there was nothing to indicate that at all. So you just start thinking something like carbon monoxide poisoning, and they're not even really sure.
No, they don't. They don't know. As of this morning, they don't know. So it's sad and unfortunate when anybody is discovered deceased under such weird, strange, undetermined circumstances. It's even more so when the decedent happens to be an actor of such legendary, esteemed figure as Gene Hackman. So, one hopes that the investigators will figure out what happened and will be able to say,
definitively what happened.
Yeah, thank you. Was looking for that word and was blanking.
Well, Ed, thanks again for coming on, but I can't let you go here because the Oscars are tonight. You're out in LA, and man, we just want to send our thoughts and prayers out to everyone out in that area.
Thank you.
From the wildfires. Now, were you affected by the wildfires at all?
Not directly. Now there were 3 fires. The one that got all the attention was the one near Malibu, Pacific Palisades. That area, many of the houses there are gone.
Just amazing, amazing footage.
Yeah, speaking of the Midwest, Steve Kerr, who played for the Bulls, coach of the Golden State Warriors. He grew up in Palisades.
Okay.
His family home, his neighborhood looks like a war zone now. So it's just, there are a lot of examples of families who have lost their homes. I live about 5 or 7 miles south of the Altadena fire, or the Eaton fire, as it was known. That also broke out about 6 hours after the Palisades fire broke out. So the Palisades got all the headlines and most of the media attention, but Altadena is a very well-known, small town-like community
Okay.
down here, and I and it's close enough to Pasadena that I got a lot of phone calls and a lot of texts, particularly those first few days when we were dealing with the Santa Ana winds. Just to make sure I'm okay. My building and my community, my immediate neighborhood community, we're okay. The only thing we were affected was the Santa Anas were so strong that first night it knocked out power for every house and building on my immediate block, and we just happened to be on the one quadrant of South Pasadena that had no power for a couple of days. But other than that, we're okay.
Well, that's good to hear. I would be remiss if I did not get maybe a prediction or two on the Oscars tonight. Best Picture, who wins? Put me on the
I
spot.
have not seen all of them. I predict the show will last close to 4 hours.
And I say that's pretty safe. That's pretty safe. No, I was. It's odd you say that because I was watching this morning. I forget what station it was on, but they said last year they did hit their time at 3.5 hours.
Yes,
and that they would try their best this year to do the same.
Yeah, no, it's no matter what you do, it's I can't remember any ceremony in 30 years lasting less than 3 hours. It's just and it's they do their best to keep everybody under 2 minutes in their acceptance speech, with a few exceptions.
Right.
And I think, between you and me, I don't mind long acceptance speeches, particularly from, tech people, from costume people who don't, or who this is their moment in the limelight. And so, the parade of agents and managers mentioned aside, there is nothing like the pure joy of being recognized amongst your peers and watching that in real time. That is fun. What we could do without is all the drawn out musical numbers.
Yeah.
We could probably, I don't know, I still don't understand why they nominate 9 pictures or 12 pictures. And they have to have somebody announce what the picture is, and then they have to somebody announce what the clip of the picture is. I mean, all that stuff is just that's what drags it. Nobody wants to see that, I mean,
Right.
It's tempting to record it and then zoom it, fast forward it and get it down in maybe 90 minutes. But at the same time, in this day and age of on-demand viewing, on-demand listening, one of the few true moments of community that network television can bring is a live event such as the Academy Awards, which most people are going to watch whether they've seen all the movies or not, because it's fun to see, George Clooney, in his tuxedo and everybody glammed up and this, that, and the other thing. So,
well, speaking of time, I promised you under 20 minutes, and we are just about right there. So real quick, where can people find out more about TV Confidential? We know they can listen to them on Indiana Talk. So
yeah, it's on like either twice. It's either on 2 times or 3 times a day on Saturdays and Sundays at IndianaTalks.com. You can also find out where to listen to TV Confidential televisionconfidential.com, televisionconfidential.com. We're also on Blue Sky, Twitter, Facebook, and all other major social media networks.
All right. He's Ed Robertson of TV Confidential. I'm Gary Snyder from the SnydeReport. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Gary.